Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here this Friday morning to our second workshop of this semester. For those of you who haven't been to our previous workshops, the focus of this is to kind of learn to do a deep dive into one of the tenets, one of the four tenets of conscious capitalism. Look at the tool sets you can use to apply in a real world scenario, and then bringing in a leader from the business community with their own real problem set for you to solve. So today we're blessed to have Matt Altman, the CEO and co-founder of Sportiqe apparel company, but we'll also be led on the educational part by Professor Elizabeth Castillo. So just to kind of give you the time frame, so we'll do about 20 minutes of the deep dive of the actual tenet itself. Then we're going to open it up to the actual problem set. Everyone has on their table a sheet that kind of focus on stakeholder orientation, stakeholder mapping. So as you're listening, you're going to be devising a stakeholder map based on the company. And then there'll be a problem set presented to you later, and we'll open up to about maybe 10 minutes of Q&A. So use this tool to help frame your mindset as you go through this entire lecture process on devising the situation and helping you to the eventuality when we're going to ask you guys to solve the problem. All right. But before we step into anything, I want to thank Avnet. We have Tyler Delilah here representing Avnet's CSR department. This workshop and all workshops and events this semester would not happen without their generous contribution and being our inaugural sponsors for this organization. So I just want to give a round of applause to that. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to invite up to the stage Professor Elizabeth Castillo. She's a professor at the College of Integrative Science and Arts, and her studies have primarily been focusing on investigating the intangible assets, so looking at social, cultural, spiritual capital, and the role they play in developing returns for organizations. So, Elizabeth.
Sustainable returns.
Sustainable returns.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So I've been to ASU since 2016. Before that, I worked for 20 years in the San Diego Natural History Museum, mostly. So that's my managerial background. Today, we're going to be talking about stakeholder orientation. So one of the things, how many people are from the Thunderbird? First of all, I want to give a shout out to them. Woo, 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 yay. Way to represent. The second question I had for you all is, how much stakeholder theory do you get in your classes right now? So is that even a term that's used, and do you dig into it? Somewhat. Okay, good. We're going to drop some stakeholder knowledge on you then today. So the first thing these are what we're going to cover today is, so what is the stakeholder model? And then how do we orient ourselves to stakeholders? And then how do we even know who stakeholders are? And then how do we understand their needs? And then once we have that knowledge, what do we do in our business differently to orient our business towards the stakeholders? So the origin of stakeholder theory really came from Ed Freeman. He's at Darden now, Darden Business School at the University of Virginia. And he pushed back on Milton Friedman, who in the 70s said, business has one purpose, and that is to maximize shareholder wealth. Well, what ended up happening with that orientation is it led to short-term thinking, financialization, and gaming of the system, which is what led to the financial crisis of 2008. So Freeman said, wait, business takes a lot more than just shareholders to be successful, and we need to start including that in our thinking. So he came up with this term stakeholder thinking, a stakeholder theory, to give a voice and a terminology so we could start including those in our mental maps. Let's see. So the stakeholder model is really thinking about our business instead of just being me-focused and egoistic, more of an ecosystem. So just like our human body has parts and all the parts have to work together, or nature has parts, organisms and processes and environments that synergistically work together. Our businesses are the same thing. We have industrial ecosystems that we need to attend to in order to create sustainable value. And so the interactions of the business with the environment create these synergistic where the sum is greater than, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But what the shareholder orientation has done is isolated and reduced everything to the financial bottom line, where you lose these synergistic properties of emergence, and it becomes a zero-sum game, right? Where there has to be winners and losers. And in truth, that is never how capitalism was envisioned. Adam Smith, in his 1759 publication, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, said moral capital is the foundation of a successful capital, because you have to have trust in the exchange process in order for people to engage in market interactions. Without that trust, people will not exchange. So the stakeholder model really is a mind shift, a paradigm shift, because it asks us to orient ourselves in a completely different way. Instead of thinking profit and my own needs as the bottom line, you have to start doing perspective taking. So first of all, who else is in this ecosystem? And you're all going to get some practice with that today through the Sportiqe case study. And then we've been habituated to think that your winning can only come at the expense of my losing. And what stakeholder theory invites us to do is step back and think creatively, how can we create these win-win engagements? And so it's shifting from a parasitic or extractive notion of business and capitalism to a mutualistic engagement. So has anybody taken sustainability or ecological classes? So you may know that in nature, there's three ways that organisms do exchange. One is parasitic, where an organism feeds off another organism. The other is commensalistic, transactional, like a bird nesting in a tree. One benefits with no harm or foul to the other. And the third, though, is mutualistic. So a bee and a flower, but over time, many bees and many flowers create cross-pollination that strengthens the biodiversity and resilience of the ecosystem. So that is an example of an emergent property that comes through cooperative interactions rather than competitive or parasitic interactions. And the result in the business ecosystem is innovation, novelty, and systemic well-being at the individual, organizational, and societal levels. So now that we know why we should do stakeholder orientation and how it's helpful to selves and society, what does it mean to become stakeholder oriented? Well, the first notion is interdependency, and it's who are these interdependent players? Well, our customers, of course, and we tend to focus on those because that's where our revenue comes from, right? But we also need to think of employees as stakeholders. I had a discussion board, one of my students yesterday posted, and we were talking about Western Union, and she said, I wonder if a company can really have customer trust if it doesn't have the trust of its employees. I thought that was a really profound question, and maybe why a lot of our companies are like Wells Fargo, maybe as an example, are in trouble. Then our investors, and I think we also attend to them because we tend to pay attention to where the money comes from, right? But there's other types of relationships, so suppliers and vendors. And in the 70s and 80s and 90s even, one of the strategies was to try to throw your risk onto your vendors instead of working with them, paying them on time, and making sure they're successful. And if you think about it, that was really a short-sighted strategy, because if your supply chain depends on the success of a vendor, but you're throwing them under the bus with your practices and putting the risk onto them, does that really make you sustainable in the long run? And then our communities, because we are all embedded in our communities. We want rich, vibrant, good schools, arts and culture, but we also need legitimacy and accountability so that we have the social license to operate. And with the globalization and financialization of the economy, this has been one of the key things that's been lost, is this local attunement and reinvestment into the communities. And then, of course, nature is the source of all of our resources, right? And we are part of nature. We're not a separate thing, but we're natural critters ourselves. So we have to attend to what are we doing to the environment? What are the consequences of our choices? So the next step would be to identify the stakeholders, and then not just say who are they, but what are they all about? What are they, how are they looking at this ecosystem? Do you know in art, the concept of cubism, where you take like Picasso, a picture, but then you draw it from all different sides? Stakeholder theory invites us to start drawing our organizations from a cubist perspective. But as we're going to see, it's not just what we think our stakeholders think. We actually need to talk to them and find out. So as an example, with this bank, first of all, you identify them. So a bank would have customers, it would have its employees, it would have community, its vendors and suppliers, and then of course the shareholders. Well, let's look at the employees here. You may say, well, I expect my employees to be at work at 8, leave at 5, and hit all their key performance indicators. But from their perspective, I need a living wage. I need to be able to feed my family. I need health benefits. I need work-life balance. And so when you start approaching it from their point of view, so through perspective taking, it really helps you tap into how you can create a value proposition that works for both. So some things to think about is, well, where are you? So there's in benchmarking, right? This is not about judgment and saying, an organization is good or bad, but just, where are you? And then how can you take the next step? So very developmental in nature. And then recognizing who are your stakeholders. A lot of times this would include immediate stakeholders that you deal with directly every day, and then more indirect stakeholders, say like government regulators. So you have to be thinking both direct and indirect. And then what are the opportunities to improve those relationships? Well, just like your personal relationships, right? You need to attend to them. And if you don't, they tend to stagnate, you lose touch, and you really have much of a relationship anymore. And then you get out of touch with each other's needs, and think about why a marriage might break up, for example. And then where do the value creation opportunities exist with underserved stakeholders? So another one of the major problems with capitalism in its current parasitic form is that it marginalizes people who cannot directly participate in the market. So if you think about children, if you think about elderly, if you think about people who have been in prison, and these people are marginalized. And so Televerde, I don't know if you've had a chance to read the case competition that's coming up, but they've done a magnificent job of turning a marginalized population into a key stakeholder partner in a way that lifts everybody up. Right? They found this untapped need. And so this is creative thinking. So the margins are sometimes your best business opportunity. Another example I love is Greystone Bakery, who has open hiring. So they do not do background checks. You come, you show up, and then, you participate. They attend very carefully to culture, and that's going to be a future workshop for us. But there is a way to do it with thoughtful attending. It's just a matter of garnering the collective will. So some things to think about stakeholders is, what is our strategy? And so for every type of stakeholder, you're going to have a different way to connect and engage with them. And I think if you think about communication strategies, that's a really powerful example of you don't talk to every audience the same way, right? Well, with stakeholders, they all have different needs. And so you need to approach their strategic perspective taking differently. And then how can we create value for them? How we create value for our employees is going to be very different than how we create value for our vendors. But the common pattern is that it's a mutual proposition where we're trying to lift them up instead of using them or parasitically feeding off of them so we can make money. And then thinking about the risks or threats with the stakeholder. So this does invite you to think about risk management in a little bit of a different way, both because you're kind of expanding your own ecosystem perspective, but also trying to think about how do they think about risk. So for an employee, you know, risk is looking like, well, how, if the company doesn't do well, my job is at risk, or are you going to increase my copay for health insurance? So trying to think about the risk from their point of view. And once you have this kind of deeper and wider perspective, then you want to embed the orientation. So how do you start creating a culture and orienting yourself? And if you only see it as a talking point or a sound bite, stakeholder perspective, you're not really going to enact practices that make the change that is going to help to be everybody successful. So to develop win-win capability in the organization, it needs to start percolating down as part of the culture, right? And that this is a value that's not only espoused, but enacted. And so how you treat your employees, I think that's sort of the low-hanging fruit here. But unfortunately, because you're looking at revenue drivers, a lot of times you see your employee as a cost center rather than the source of your value creation and as an investment opportunity. And then how do we make sure that people are trained and have the tools? So when the economy turns down, one of the first things that gets cut in an organization is professional development and learning. Right. And this is very short-sighted because you're cutting the knees out from what the organization needs to stay innovative and then also to keep your employees engaged. And so one of the things I really give a shout out to Starbucks, you know, they have that partnership with ASU, right, where they pay for their employees to get their undergraduate degree here, even if the people aren't going to stay with the company. And so we offer a class in diversity in organizations, and I think how valuable that perspective has been to help them do business. But if they only saw their employees as a cost center, they would never invest in their education and then have their employees become more actionable about diversity. And then embedding the idea in incentives and rewards. So this is where the talk is cheap, but where action and rubber meets the roads. Are you really orienting your compensation system, your incentive system to people who are taking a stakeholder perspective, talking to customers in a meaningful way, doing qualitative research, building those findings into the next iteration of your business model? Or are you just saying, yes, we're going to put out this beautiful CSR report, but we're just going to keep doing what we want to do, and have pseudo change, I call it, where you can look like you're going through the motions, but you're really keeping things the same. And so some things to think about, and we might break out for a couple minutes with the table, is, you know, why does win-win seem so impossible? How have we become so jaded and disoriented that we think your winning has to come at the expense of my losing? What are some of the obstacles to take this, adopting this stakeholder perspective? Some of it could be time, right? As we have this mental model of what it means to do work, right? And we're very task oriented, and we're thinking about productivity and efficiency. Well, stakeholder practices invite us to step back and really do some reflective dialogue, both internally and externally. But somehow that's not what we think work is. And so reorienting our mental models of what work is. And then how can we create creative ways to rebalance loss? So if a vendor has a problem, how can you help become part of the solution versus just say, I'm going to just go find another vendor? And the benefit of this is that it creates this practice of reciprocal exchange, where then the vendor feels more committed and supportive of you when you maybe can't pay your bill on time one month. So that this is these emergent properties of reciprocity that really have been eroded in the current way we practice capitalism. And then what are the long-term perspectives? How are we doing on time? Okay, so I think what we'll do is just a 2-minute break for you to talk about some of these ideas at your table, and then to point out and report out what are some of our findings and thinking. So I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes, so go. Okay, so let's take a few minutes. We're nearing the end of our time together. So who would like to start us off with their insights? Okay. You have been nominated. Mhm. Very good. Very nice. Thank you. Who's next? Over at this table, Mackenzie, Vivian, one of you want to? Or next quarter? So two of the things I heard you say is that you can really get to short-term thinking, which just sets off a cascade of bad things. And that you get into this insular, especially when times get tough, you get into this insular way of thinking, which really is the opposite of what we need to be doing, reaching out for support, right, when times get tough. But what about this table? Okay. I know you probably speak more to this, but I also wonder, does it take the willingness to risk and be vulnerable? And sometimes I think, that Incubus song, that fear is driving our, instead of maybe I should be the one behind the wheel, right? So what about this table back here?
rather than helping each other. You believe that I have to cut other one's food, or I have to outperform someone else to perfect it. Good in moderation, but if you just control it, it becomes a mayhem and
And the cycle just really perpetuates it, right? Like I think about how now really a lot of scarcity is artificial creation of scarcity, right? Because so the cycle feeds itself, or the system feeds itself. Excellent. What about this table?
We agree that it really relates to your mindset.
Mhm.
We were talking about the car manufacturer, how certain manufacturers use their suppliers. Toyota was investing in suppliers, and how that created different relationships. So it kind of just goes down to your being vulnerable to your supplier or through your ups and downs, how that affects.
Mhm. So excellent. And perfect example with the Toyota. Thank you for sharing that. So in closing, I guess the key message that I'll leave you is, well, we see business as being the answer, and it's important that you all studied this. I really think the humanities are the key to solving our problems, because in the end, our business practices are expressions of ourselves and our ethos. And so the question becomes, who do we want to be? Right? And until we attend and put that question front and center and realize that our business practices are the answer to that question, for better or worse, I'm not sure we can get to the place of authenticity and vulnerability. So that's the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So we have all got some experience doing a deeper dive within this tenet. We have given you some kind of tools, some framing of how to kind of build that stakeholder orientation, how to solve and develop those win-win solutions. So now we're going to give you guys the opportunity to solve a real life business solution. So we are very grateful to have my friends. I don't know, are we there yet? Okay, all right, okay. Oof, save me the embarrassment. But we're here to have my friend Matt Altman, who, again, I specified is the co-founder and CEO of Sportiqe Apparel. They're a locally based company, but globally connected. And that's all I want to say about them, because he has so much more, and I don't want to give away the cart before the horse. So without further ado, Matt Altman. I'll take this.
Testing. Can you guys hear through this? Hello? Okay, great. All right. So really excited to be here with you guys today. And I just want to express quick gratitude to Jacob and to Mayan for spending time getting to know me, getting to know Sportiqe, and bringing Sportiqe into the fold to be a part of ASU's MBA program and Conscious Capitalism. So I think Simon Sinek got it right when he said, start with why. I don't know how many people are familiar with Simon Sinek. And that's kind of where I want to start today as we proceed. Hold on, there we go. As we proceed today. And I'm going to start with, why are we here? And I think it's a deep question. And I'm going to first start with that layer being, we're here to talk about conscious capitalism. We're here to talk about stakeholder integration. But as I really look at conscious capitalism, as I look at Sportiqe, and as we talk about stakeholder integration, and we talk about the case study, I think it's important to understand a little bit more about Sportique's higher purpose, our values and behaviors, and what drive us every day to make the decisions that we make in the world, and then how that pertains to the case that you're going to see today. So let's talk about purpose. So Sportiqe started in 2006. My background was in professional sports, doing merchandising for the Phoenix Suns and Arizona Diamondbacks from 1993 to 2005, and really saw a niche in the marketplace to deliver better lifestyle apparel into what I call the destination retail market. And as Sportiqe has evolved and really started understanding its why, and quite frankly, myself really starting to understand my why, it really kind of started start peeling back those layers into understanding why are we here. And so fundamentally, we as human beings have this need to feel good. We ultimately want to be happy in our lives. And when we're not, feeling good, something's wrong. Whether it's health related, or it can be as, hey, I'm not feeling good sitting in the chair and I got to keep readjusting, to dealing with family issues, maybe a loved one that's sick and passing, as I'm actually experiencing right now. But ultimately, we want to feel good. And so that really, Sportique's answer and higher purpose is really to make people comfortable. We really put that stake in the ground that in everything that we do is around this purpose. So it's not only in the products that we make, but it's also in how we treat people and how we handle and design processes to make that experience as comfortable as possible. And we're challenged with it every day because, knock on wood, we're in a growing business. And as you grow, processes that work today don't work the next day. And so we have to continue to always evaluate and look at how to have this purpose also tie into how our ecosystem, in how we treat employees and how we treat our stakeholders and things of that nature. So I think it's important to start with purpose. And then just some more information about the company and just how then we do what we do. And we develop unique signature fabrics and use contemporary design. Feel good when you touch them and when you wear them. Well, you'll ever have in your, so hopefully have the opportunity to connect with Sportiqe. That has been the experience for you. So let's talk about values. I think values are super important. It's really, to me, the fiber, that energy that really creates the culture for a company. I think all companies, have a culture. It's whether it's consciously created or not. And frankly, I kind of want to just give a quick little tidbit about conscious capitalism, since that's why we're here. When I first heard about conscious capitalism, I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. But I didn't get it. I was a bit confused because for me, consciousness with human beings, not in capitalism. And so as I started to understand a little bit more about conscious capitalism and that they really take leadership into perspective, to me, it goes back to the humanities. And really, it's human beings that can be conscious. That's where it really starts. And so as you look to create values and behaviors in your business, I think as conscious leadership and conscious leaders that you can have in your organization to instill these behaviors is really important. So our first one is teamwork. And we have it in our room. It says we get it done with. And reminders on the wall, but to be honest, Sportiqe would not have grown and been where it is today without teamwork. And one of the things for me around this value is ultimately we all have this innate desire to be independent and to really have our own individuality, but we also have this need for community, that ultimately for us to evolve in our life, we need support from friends, family, other people, and whatnot. So teamwork is a really big aspect for Sportiqe, and really every teammate at Sportiqe, they all own some part of the business and play a key role and bring that to the big picture every day. Second, values can-do attitude. And just tell a quick story about this, because when Sportiqe was starting in its infancy, and we started hiring new people. And actually, fortunately, we were able to hire some ASU graduates. And I had been, in my prior through had sold dollars merchandise in a 7-day period. So I knew what was possible, but not everyone gets to have that experience. And so when we got faced with some demands from a customer early on, employees were like, well, we can't do that. And so that was just like nails on the chalkboard for me. And so I just asked, I said, okay, well, what can we do? What could you do? What And so it just sparked this conversation. Well, we can do this. I'm like, great. Well, what else can we do? Well, we can do this and we can do that. I'm like, okay, great. Let's tell them this. And then next thing you know, we actually did what we said we couldn't do. And so this is on the wall. It's Sportiqe, around having a can-do attitude. And then the next value to me, which is super important in terms of culture, and it's an ever-evolving process because we are human beings, and it's human beings that are driving business and making the decisions in business. And some days we're feeling good and having a good day, and some days maybe we're not on top of our game, and how we treat people could be different. And so really for Sportiqe's respect, we have this word up in our office called genshai. This Japanese word that means to not treat someone as if they're small. And so to really, and so this is a really good reminder, and it's a really important value for us, that internally to treat each other with respect, that we really, as human beings, we're all equal. We may have different roles within the company, but we're still a human being and no different than you or I. And it also translates into how we connect and work with our stakeholders as well. Integrity, having integrity in what we do and in our craft. The next one, evolve, and this is probably one of my favorites, because again, fundamentally, we as human beings want to feel good, but I think we're also here to learn. And that learning process never stops. From the day we're born to that last breath, there's a learning that's taking place, and if we're conscious and embrace learning, it's a really fun experience. And so for us at Sportiqe, it's around having a growth and learning mindset, and really, how do we get better just 1% every day? How can each person and what they're doing get 1% better every day, and have that in their mindset? And then ultimately, fun. I mean, come on, like we are in the clothing industry, and we get to help people, who are going through difficult times, by providing some comfort to them in the sweatpants that we provide or the hoodies that we provide. But ultimately, it's fun. And really, I've been joking a lot with Jacob, so I hope he's taken it all in fun. Maybe not, but yeah, I think having fun is really important. So that's a little bit on values. And you guys just saw the stakeholder integration, so thanks for validating things for me. But this is how we talk about stakeholder integration at Sportiqe. First, owners, investors, team members, which are our employees, customers, supply chain partners, which we'll get into in the case today, key vendors and consultants. And a key vendor, for us could be a financial institution like a bank. Key consultants, we have an inventory management firm that helps us monthly with reporting and consulting on our inventory. The community, I think the community and our social impact is really important, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then also the environment. And so this is how we look at and talk about stakeholders. And then what are our keys to stakeholder integration? And I'll kind of touch upon a couple of these things. And again, I think it's, the mindset approach with the partnership mentality, that we're partners. And I've said this to employees, that we're partners, in this. And again, having win-win, creating win-win in that. So again, it goes back to mindset and approaching that in what we're doing. And so it's not as easy as you might seem, because you also have to then take in those values and behaviors and say, how am I approaching these decisions, these partnerships with our values and things of that nature? Creating value. Are the stakeholders that we're engaged with, they need to be creating value to Sportiqe, and we also need to be creating value to them. Obviously, in a customer, we need to for sure be creating value to them, and the value back to them is if we're creating that value, then they're going to be engaged with us. They're going to want to give us more orders. They're going to want to do more designs and things of that nature. Transparency. So this goes to the vulnerability part, and sharing information, understand, being a little vulnerable about what the challenges that you're facing. And we'll get into that a little with the case study. But I think that's important. If from a human standpoint, going back to the humanities discussion that was brought up, is if you understand just and can put yourself in that other person's shoes, and they can put themselves in yours, and understanding, then that's helpful. Now, at the end of the day, it may not be in alignment, and I think that's another important aspect. Just because we're saying all these things, at the end of the day, if you're trying to fit that square peg in a round hole, it's not going to work. And so that's also part of the process in terms of alignment. Talked with Jacob and Mayana about alignment with owners and investors, and I've had investors, well, great, they provided capital, but really was poor alignment from a culture standpoint, from a stakeholder integration standpoint. It can be very challenging to leadership in the decisions that they're trying to make in the business, if there isn't proper alignment and you have investors that are pushing for certain things that aren't in alignment with the values of the business and the vision of the business. I also think alignment is super important with teammates, and super picky about who we bring into our culture. I've had the experience of having a super high performer on the sales end, drove revenue, but was a really poor culture fit and caused such disruption from having a comfortable process and things of that nature. And then the last one is think long term and just have this infinite mindset. Those are our keys when we look at stakeholder integration. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So first one is our partnership with the NBA. So fortunately, from day one, Sportiqe has had a license and a partnership with the NBA. It's what really helped us get the company off the ground. And I think what was really important is my and my business partner's background of that space and understanding the needs of that customer, understanding how their business operated. And we created a business model that completely supported their business in terms of timeliness of delivery, and providing a niche product to at that time was a displaced consumer who didn't want to wear a jersey, want to wear a heavy shirt and things of that nature, and bringing what we, fashion, and really what inspired the name Sportiqe is really bringing boutique inspired garments and fabrics to this sports lifestyle realm. And so it's been knock on wood, a long-term relationship, and we continue to think long-term with them as their business grows and becomes even more global in nature. The Sportiqe team. So we talk about win-win. One of the things that I had as a goal in starting Sportiqe was, at minimum, that people and profits were on the same plane. And I think you hear a lot of stories where companies are doing things to drive revenue, shareholder price, and things of that nature at the expense of people. And so at minimum, I want people and profits to be on the same plane. So I think the simple win-win in this regard for Sportiqe is really, if the company wins, then the team wins. And so we have a bonus plan that's strictly tied to performance. And so as the company's grown, the bonuses that these teammates have got has been quite substantial, and it's what really continues to fuel the growth of the business, having that type of partnership. Obviously, you know, 401k and other types of benefits of health are always important, but I think also our culture and how we, you know, treat people. And also, I will talk about transparency. Once a month, we have a company lunch. Everyone gets together, and I share the numbers. I think it's important that if there's a bonus that's tied to performance, that they know where we stand, what's quote unquote the score. And you know, I was taught not to share that information. You know, coming from working where, you know, before starting Sportiqe, I was just taught you don't share that information. You don't talk about that, you know, that information. And I learned that once I started sharing that information, the engagement level went up, and people were more, took ownership of what they were doing and the decisions that they were making. And so I can't speak more to being transparent. I think it even speaks to that win-win in an owner-investor relationship, having that transparency as well. Obviously, from an investor standpoint, the win for them and the value is that they're getting a return, but also that they are getting proper information is, I think, really important and something that an investor needs. And the last one, which we're really proud of, is the social impact. So as you know, our purpose is to make people comfortable, and our social impact is really around helping kids in crisis and helping kids that are going through a challenging time. What can we do to help them be a little bit more comfortable in what they're dealing with? And so one of the partnerships that I like to highlight is UMOM. They're a local nonprofit in town that focuses on eliminating homelessness in Arizona. They're doing great work. And so we donate product to them. We've done promotions where proceeds of our sales will go to UMOM. And the product and the sales, we really target to their youth and teenage programs that they have at their campus. And next month, the company, we're going every Tuesday night, they have like a reading night for the kids. And so the Sportiqe team is going to go to UMOM, and we'll take time and read to the kids that night. And so that speaks to the community part of our stakeholders. And I think that leads us to our case. So I think everyone has a handout. Not yet. Okay. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, no, I got it.
So as the handout is being passed out, I'll talk about this a little bit. Obviously, you can read the slide as well. So the whole idea with this case study that we're going to do is this scenario is around an issue that's taken place with a supply chain partner with Sportiqe. And so the whole objective here is understanding the issue understanding Sportique's purpose, understanding Sportique's stance around stakeholder integration, and taking this issue and you guys taking some time to figure out how to solve it. What would be some good ideas to resolve it, and from working through different scenarios to actually firing this. Everything's on the table when you guys look at this. And I will say, I go back to alignment. If it's a round hole, square peg, if it doesn't fit, those are tough decisions to make. And Sportiqe looks long term. We just transitioned a financial partner because of the long term capabilities versus the short term. And we had a partner that was amazing for us from A to B, but from B to C, we need some other results and whatnot. Okay, so case has been handed out. I'll just highlight it a little bit. So Sportiqe designs and specs out its products here in Tempe, Arizona, and we utilize third-party manufacturers to cut, sew, and construct our garments. And we work with manufacturers in LA, in Mexico, and Asia. And one of our main suppliers is in Ningbo, China. And I think the best way to Ningbo is like one of the oldest cities in China, and I think one of the best ways I explain it is it's kind of like Cleveland or maybe Detroit. So big city, industrial, and old. And we now have been working with this supply chain partner for about 3 years, and they produce our core signature items, which are the Comfy Tee, the Olsen hoodie, Rowan hoodie, and the Haywood zip up. And these styles have been tried and true for Sportiqe for years. The Comfy Tee has been our signature item since 2006. And the other styles, really the last 5-6 years, have been core styles, tried and true staple items for the company. And so over the last 3 years, the company's been has an average growth rate of 25%, last year being 30%. And so we've seen our inventory actually double to support the business this past year. And we really, to really support our customers around creating value and listening to them, is we made a decision to always keep these core styles in stock. And so that's an important thing that we deliver to our customers. So a lot of our customers, they have programs in their retail stores with these products. And so when they sell out, they don't want to wait. They want to get more inventory back on their floor as soon as possible. So about 3 years ago, Sportiqe made a strategic move to shift its core styles from Mexico to this supply chain partner in Ningbo, China. A lot of this was due to increased costs in raw materials, increased costs in labor, as well as longer lead times. And there was a big thing that happened in LA. There was probably 18 fabric mills in LA, and it got shrunk to 3. So costs went up, lead times went up. And so all the benefits of working close to home with Mexico went away. And so we were kind of put in a challenging position, and we were fortunate to partner with the supply chain in Ningbo that we're with now. And just as a side note, we took about 6 months to vet a number of different suppliers, going through sampling and testing and making sure the fabric, which is super important for us, is to spec, and that it has to pass that comfort, feel good factor, and also sustainability as well. So the other aspect is we've done business in Turkey, we've done business in China, and a lot of the big challenges there is QC. as you're going to see in this case. And to circumvent that, we actually have boots on the ground. When we started this, we had 2 staff members through a trading company that we work with that we're completely focused on Sportiqe for quality control, development, and things of that nature. So that was actually put in place on the onset of us starting with this supplier. So the issue that came up is everyone familiar with Chinese New Year? So it's very interesting. So I love working with Asia, but Chinese New Year is actually a big disruption, and I've seen it actually be a 6-month disruption. And why I say this, it's 3 months on the front end. Everyone is trying to push as much product out at the same time. And so all the freight costs also go up in this period of time. And then Chinese New Year's happens and everything stops. And then post Chinese New Year, it takes a good 3 months to get back to some normalcy in terms of getting the labor back, and then also getting the process and systems and getting back to a consistent workflow. And so you get this 6 months of amazing flow of business where you can get goods out in time, freight costs are very low, and then you hit Chinese New Year. And so, we actually plan for it, and we really try and plan to have a lot of our goods ship in September. That's right before the rate break. We plan ahead with our partner to do that. And growth. So we were outperforming and didn't have enough inventory. We made a commitment to always have these certain styles in stock, and understanding Chinese New Year is coming up, we needed more inventory to ship before the end of the year and in January, because that inventory has to basically carry us through the end of April. And so we made a big push to bring in a lot more inventory. And so here's the other thing that happens with Chinese New Year is everything just gets compressed. And so if people are working faster, people are maybe not paying attention to certain details, and I think that's really what we're seeing in this case. So Sportiqe had containers of its core styles shipped and delivered before the end of the year. And the issue that came up was just complete surprise and utter dismay, where we discovered defective product from the factory. We found goods that were out of tolerance from all sorts of areas, from the sleeve length to the body length to the chest width. Were all out of tolerance. It wasn't consistent, like, oh, it's just the body length. It was multiple things that we were finding. And so we were highly concerned, because we can't put goods out into the marketplace, especially to our core customers who are depending on this product from us, and they have their value that they're creating to their stakeholders, right? So what happens to one can affect many in this whole stakeholder integration environment. And so we were seeing multiple problems. We did some random sampling, and we were finding on units that we tested, we were finding ranges from 5% to as high as 30% goods were out of tolerance. And so what we ended up doing was contracting a third party to inspect all of these goods. And so fortunately, there's actually an apparel manufacturing place in Tucson, and there was actually a company here in Phoenix that we were able to use to help go through this inspection process. And so the issue here was it was around holidays. So staffing was really tight, and we had 30,000 plus units to inspect, and it takes time. You have to lay the garment out, and you have to measure and things of that nature. So it's about 2 minutes per garment to do this. And so basically, all of January, this inspection went on, and which caused we couldn't ship product to customers that needed goods right at the end of the year and for the first part of the year. And our trust and confidence with this supplier was highly in question. And the Sportiqe team was more than me, was probably more concerned and dealing with this supplier, and how do we move forward. And so so basically that's the nuts and bolts of the case. And so what I would like to propose from you guys is what should be done. How should this situation be resolved, and how do we move forward, and what do we do? And so I like to open it up to questions. And so we'll do, I don't know how much time you want to do Q&A.
We'll do 10 minutes of questions. So
So-
just raise your hand if you do have a question. I'll pass the mic to you. Yeah, and we'll move from there. So opening up for salvo.
Is everyone clear on the problem? Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Justin. Just a couple quick things. So 3% defective, what's the norm?
Great question. So the norm is about 1% in country, right? So there's already QC things happening in country before goods are shipped, where they're going to tolerate, there could be a 1% tolerance around issues. And if it's below, then goods will probably be released. If not, then everything gets inspected. So if they're seeing problems, then they should be checking more goods and not shipping anything that's bad. And we get QC reports when goods ship as well. And so we were having problem again, Chinese New Year, compressed time, rushing. We were not getting the reports fast enough either. Goods are arriving, then we're getting reports, which caused us, hey, we should check this stuff.
And the QC, is that third party or is that from the company?
So QC is through the trading company that we're partnered with over there.
So the manufacturer is separate?
Correct.
Okay. That's good for me.
Next question. Oh, wow. This table. Sorry. Let's go around.
Sawyer is my name. With the issues that you found, were you able to trace them back to a specific manufacturer, or was it spread throughout? Because I saw there's 3 different manufacturers.
Yes, we did.
And it was just one of them, or was it multiple?
It was 2, but one was worse than the other.
Okay. And delving in a little bit more on that, the 2 staff that you had out there, that was through the partnership, or?
That's through our trading company that we're partnered with.
Okay.
And so there's actually someone here in Phoenix that actually ASU supply chain grad who operates the trading company and is working in our office multiple times in the week, and then has 2 staff members in country that works with him on our stuff. They're independent from the factory.
Are they native to Asia, or are they native to? Okay.
Yes, and that's a key thing for us. That was a key thing in making a decision to work with this trading company and supplier.
Hi, my name's Steven. Kudos to you guys for asking more questions. I guess I'm a little bit more biased towards action on answering the question of what should we do and how should we approach it. I'd say the first thing in dealing with Asian cultures in my history has been get on a plane and go over there. So when they see it's important enough for the leaders of the company to actually come to them, now it's serious. It's no longer kind of a problem or anything else. When you take the time and effort to actually go and visit them in person, it lends gravitas to the situation. The other big three things before I pass the mic here. One, back to your values. I think the first thing you guys need to do is reestablish trust and figuring out what it takes to do that for you and with the suppliers. The second thing.
Well, you're jumping ahead.
No,
You're
we're
already
jumping ahead a
answering.
little bit. I mean, those are absolutely great. This is so right now, team. We just want to focus on. I'm sorry. Steve.
Let me just comment on one thing. What's your name again? Steven. What thing Steven said. So, I actually leave Friday for Asia. I'll be there for 10 days. I agree. Being in person is super important. And I will say in this scenario, it was actually in reverse. We were like, you guys need to get over here and see what's happening. So that was, but I agree with you.
So just to specify, right now, this is exploratory, asking questions to get a better understanding of the situation. We're going to break off into teams later and devise a solution. So this team is already off to a great start, but let's just keep the questions posed. Solutions will be coming later. Okay, it's all right.
Yeah, hi, I'm Atul Mishra. Regarding the defects you said, the case mentions about sleeve length, body length, and chest width. I wanted to know how manageable is rectifying these defects, because whatever I know, many of the garments that are manufactured, they have extra fabric so that if there's any alteration involved, that can be done. So any idea on this one?
Well, we're getting into, I don't want to get into the solution too much, but for the most part, what we were experiencing was across the board was everything was short. So if there was an issue with the body length, it was short. If there was an issue with sleeve length, it was short. And if there was an issue with chest width, it was short. So it actually kind of speaks to, I don't want to give too many things. Well, I'll give this at least away, is it speaks to the fabric and how the fabric was treated prior to construction.
Hi, I'm Sita from first year. What was the time difference between when the vendor was approved and when they decided to ship this?
What do you mean?
So were they able to ship product that was approved through quality control before?
Yeah, so we've been working with them for almost 3 years. Yeah. And like I said, we've grown the business, we've grown these core styles with them over this 3-year period. And it's been pretty much like clockwork, goods coming in and being good and moving through properly. Yeah, it was actually working really well. And just to give you a little bit more background into some things that we've done with this supplier is them understanding, this goes back to value, them understanding our needs, is we express to them what our customers are looking for and that we need to keep these styles. We as a company need to make sure we're having this inventory. They said, okay, we will help you and we'll also back that inventory up in country. So they created their own inventory of these styles. So when we were running low, they can just ship and then it would trigger just to make more, and things were working well. And until we notice, hey, we need, and so.
Hi, my name is Vivian. My question is, are all vendors have quality issues? And the next question is the QC, is it only final QC before the shipment?
Well, the first one is, I will say all vendor QC issues. So work with decorative and screen printing teams here in Phoenix. We run into QC problems here all the time, right? It's how are things handled? How are things caught before it comes to us, or it gets to customer and the consumer. So then to me, it's how do you mitigate risk? How do you mitigate these issues? Because there is a lot of humans touch involved in this process. And so how do you maximize your opportunities, minimize risk, put proper processes in place, and check things so things are working? What was the second part of your question?
For the QC, is it always just the final QC before shipment? During the manufacturing process, was there any QC related involved?
Great question. In this scenario, it was final.
Okay.
Hi, my name is
Good question.
Mackenzie. What is your guys' overall needs? Like you said that your product doubled, like the
Mhm.
amount of product that you guys needed doubled. So
Mm.
how much is that actual number? And then what is your guys' busy season? Like, do you guys have a busy season where you have more product that is demanded from your customers compared to others? And when is that time frame? And then last question, I swear. Are the workers who are actually manufacturing the products, are their needs met by the manufacturers who you partner with?
Wait, let's go back to your first, and let's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because then I'm gonna
Sorry,
forget all the
I know.
So
I know. First
question.
question. How many products are you at now? You said that your product demand has doubled. So how many products do you need
Yeah.
in stock now?
Okay, great. So we've probably went through almost 1 million units last year, and our goal is to keep 90 days worth of inventory in stock. So when we work with our inventory management team, we have goals. We set goals for every single style. Every single style has a goal, an annual goal. And so we're monitoring inventory levels accordingly. And this is actually important because then we give those projections to the factory so they know what they need to help with capacity, what kind of lines that they need to support our business. Because again, going back to this partnership, when we place an order, we want goods to ship in 30 days and then another 20, 30 days in transit. So we have goods in 60 days. And so a lot of things have to go right to make sure those lead times are established. So when you're now starting to see customers come in and outperform, like let's say, we had a goal for this hoodie that we were going to sell 100,000 units, but now a customer, hey, they're going to be ordering X amount every month. Or they're putting it into a program and we don't know how it's going to perform until it gets on the sales floor. And then we're always looking at inventory and adjusting the goals accordingly based on what we know in that moment of time. So what we were finding is things were outperforming and we needed more inventory on our core styles.
And then my second question was, do you guys have like a peak season?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are the time constraints of that?
Yeah. So the peak is September to the end of the year.
Mhm.
And so there's a number of things happening. So a big part of our business is in professional sports with the NBA and the NHL. So their seasons start in October. So we're shipping them product in September, October. And then all of our other accounts are wanting product for holiday, fall season. So everything happens there. So that's one peak. And then January, February is probably our slowest. And then March, April, it starts to pick up again. In particular, again, going back to professional sports, NBA playoffs start in April. And so the teams that are doing well, we start shipping a lot of product to them. And then May to Labor Day is actually another kind of peak because we have a lot of customers that have a summer tourist business. And so we're needing to fulfill product for them usually May to August, because whatever, if their season's going to end Labor Day, they want to trail off. So does that help answer your?
Yeah, absolutely. And then my third question was, do you know, because you have the partnership with the trader who has the partnership with the manufacturer, correct? Do you know if the workers inside the manufacturing plant, are their needs being met in as far as like workplace, like how many hours that they're working,
Yeah.
things like that? Are they being paid fairly, having sufficient breaks, things that are standard for that part of China?
Yeah, so great question. I'm glad you asked that. So the short answer is yes. I personally visit twice a year, but the trading company also conducts a third-party independent audit. So they'll look at working conditions, labor, things of that nature, and so they're accredited. It's an accredited factory. We've partnered with another factory where a lot of big brands product is made, and so they've already have all the approved standards from Disney to a lot of the professional sport brand, like Under Armour and a lot of golf companies and things of that nature. Yeah.
We have two more. Was it two more remaining questions? All right, we'll get to you guys. Sure, but going to use a moderator's prerogative right here. So you talk about so transparency is a key important thing. Through the cycle of this issue, did you ever go back to your investors to describe the situation? And if so, did you get a response or maybe kind of recommendation of how your company should address this problem?
So the answer is yes. I shared the information from a transparency perspective. Hey, this is what's happening. But again, when this goes back to alignment, the investors were like, thanks for letting us know. I said, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, great. Right. So they're trusting the team to, resolve it. Right.
And then just quickly, then the second aspect. So you talked about how your incentive program for your employees is directly tied to the growth and profitability of the company itself. So this problem definitely shows potential either for stagnation or decline in growth. Can you talk to maybe the interactions or the reactions of your employees to this problem statement and like maybe where they were inclined to go with?
I think what I'll say is they took it to heart and felt the pain just as much as I did, right? So we're in this together. It wasn't like, oh, it's Matt and Jason's, the owner's problem. It's our problem, and how are we going to solve it, right? So so I think to me that was validating, to know that as a team we're going to solve this. And again, it goes back to values, right? So when we look at this, how do our values show up in what we're going to do here? And so
Then our final two questions, Elvis.
Did I steal one? I had another one, but I forgot it. I should have written it down. I know the case talked a lot about like the issues on the supplier end. I know you mentioned that there was a delay with shipment for like December and I guess most of January. However, what was the response from like your customers in terms of the delays? Like, were they like for the most part obviously I assume they're upset, but like kind of what's the severity on the customers' end in terms of like, wow, you're already 1 month, 2 months late. Like we're gonna go somewhere else. Like they didn't really talk a lot about much. So I wonder if you can share what the response is from the customers.
Well,
end.
to be honest, I was hoping it was going to come up in Q&A. I didn't want to reveal everything in the case. So fortunately, this scenario happened at our low peak, our low season, right? So if this is happening in September, we're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So the delays that we had to our customers, couple things happened. They were upset because they're missing some turns on the floor. Some were expecting goods right before holiday to move through. And then some, they wanted that product in January to set their floor, for the first part of the year. So we were transparent with them, told them what the problem was. We found products that were out of tolerance and explained the situation, and what steps we were taking to make sure that we're going to ship you proper goods. So I think the biggest thing I've learned around dealing things with customers, when you're transparent and upfront, there's a lot more understanding versus when the ship date comes and they're like, where's my product? How I didn't ship? But when you're proactive around it, there's a lot more understanding. So yes, they were upset. Yes, we couldn't take orders either. So we had orders that we couldn't ship, but then we have customers that are saying, hey, we want to order this. And we're saying, where one of our big things with our business model is timeliness of delivery and quick turn. And so now that goes away on some of these styles for about 30 days. And so that did put a bad taste in the mouths of some clients, especially if they're newer clients and they're still learning how to work with us. And we've told them this is how we work, and now we can't deliver. So it definitely created some pain.
And this wasn't the question, but I just thought about it, is how big is your staff for the whole company?
25.
Okay.
Small.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dustin. Thanks for being here. It's two questions, but if we only have time for one, you can just pick one. One question. Okay, I like this question better. If you have some of these core styles sent here and some of the products are out of spec, out of tolerance when they get here, is there possibly a different market that you can serve with those seconds? Maybe different customers?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe that can be in your solution.
Thank you.
I will say this: we're really quality and is really important, and so putting out something that's not representing the brand properly is something that we would not want to do, but there could be.
All right, those are great questions, and I expect to see some great recommended solutions. So we did go double our Q&A time, but I didn't want to stop because, again, we just had so much participation. So what we're going to do is at 10 o'clock, we're going to come back as teams. We're going to have a representative from each table come up and give your recommendations. So right now, work amongst each other with the information you're given, come up and devise what you would have done or what your recommendation would be for Sportiqe given the situation. And then we'll allow you guys each a chance to present your solution. So in the meantime, work amongst, eat more food. I'm sure we have plenty of leftovers. And I'll see you guys at 10. I know it's a little early, but I see that some people have to be heading out pretty soon. So do we have some teams that are ready to maybe present their pitch solution? We have one over here. Anyone? Bueller? Dawson? Yeah. Okay. All right. We're gonna start this up. So I'll have this team representative come up and let's give your guys' wherever you want to be.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Sportiqe, for giving us this challenge. Wow, behind the podium, so this is really official. Okay, we didn't actually write out our recommendation, and I hope my table mates will jump in and give me some guidance here, but we had more questions and also sort of a portfolio of things to consider. Actually, let me go back to my table. I'm gonna crowdsource this one because we really approach this as a team, and I don't want to leave things out.
So one of the things we talked about was really taking a look at our capacity and the capacity of the manufacturers. Given how much Sportiqe is growing, do we need to be talking to or developing an additional manufacturer to deal with demand. Another thing we talked about was going off of one of the things Stephen mentioned about letting the suppliers know how the importance of this issue, also talking about the importance of transparency from their end and the importance of honest answers. So letting them know if we ask for an order, we would rather hear no, we can't do that, than a yes that ends up with bad product, and making sure that our incentives and rewards and consequences are aligned with that decision. Those were the big things.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And then we also had some questions about whether the existing supplier base that we've established is really sufficient if the demand is growing so much. So we were thinking about that a couple of different ways. One is maybe it's a mistake to have all of our manufacturers in China getting hit with Chinese New Year's at the same time. It also could be that if we have a small number of suppliers that are giving us these really core products that our customers depend on, that's a vulnerability, right? Like if there's a fire in a factory or something. So we had some concern there. And then just thinking about how maybe when we set up these contracts with the suppliers a few years ago, we had a certain idea and they had a certain idea about what demand was likely to look like. And this has changed. So Sportiqe really probably owns some of the responsibility for the current problem also. Not that anything's been done wrong, but just that this isn't just about the supplier not following through. We've kind of changed the game on them. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a square peg in a round hole, but maybe we need to work with them a little bit differently, even invest in the supplier as Toyota has to help improve their capacity. We were talking about that. And then looking at possibly diversifying and using more suppliers also. Thank you.
First of all, Matt, microphone on. He's off. All right. So you can, you're free to respond to the presentations. I just would recommend not giving away the solution yet until the end. So if you have any feedback for the teams. All right, then we'll just go on to the next team. So if a representative can come up to the podium. I don't know.
Yeah, can you hear me? Anyways, I'm very loud. So our team divided the whole solution into 3 stages. One was the firefighting, which is what we have to do immediately. Second was long-term. Now, long-term was again divided into what we expect from our suppliers and what we need to do. So it has to be both ways. Coming to firefighting, we have some number crunchers in our team. So we came out to 900 units, which was defective if you take the sample of 30,000. We decided we can do away with it. Then coming to the long term, first and foremost, we decided that it is important that we talk with our team on China and on how to plan for the next new year, allowing for sudden change in plans if we have to increase our capacity because we are growing. And for that, we do need to involve them with us, especially for the next coming new year. So that the important thing is to keep on learning from our mistakes. Each mistake should be there for us to be better next time we see that situation. Then our team suggested that we need to have quality control in China itself, rather than the products when they come here and then we do a quality check. Can we have a procedure with our partners so that we do that check in China itself, so that when the product comes, it is as good. We need not even check the product. Then we decided that payment system can be reviewed with them so that the payment is received by the suppliers in China once the product come here and they go through the quality inspection. And last was from, as I said, on what we can do from our side. What we decided that we need to have, as a company is growing, demand forecasting expertise is needed so that we are also accurate on our side when it comes to how much products we are going to produce every year. That's it. Thank you.
First of all, this was kind of a fun topic to look at, and then also balancing the stakeholder model versus some more traditional cutthroat strategies that people use with their suppliers. First of all, the one that one of our team members mentioned during the Q&A phase, Stephen, before he had to leave, was the in-person visit, working on reestablishing trust, and also connected in that really working to identify what was the root cause before making any quick decisions as the next steps. As your values show, and also the conscious capitalism values, it's long-term thinking. It's these relationships that should go on for infinity, if possible. So we don't want to do something that jeopardizes that value, that concept. We don't want to come in and throw things around and mess stuff up and move really quickly, but we want to really understand what happened, whether it was a capacity issues with some of the manufacturers, whether it was an issue with our quality inspection team, whether they need to be expanded or something needs to change in that area, or the potential to find someone new, ideally not, again, with these long-term relationships. And moving forward, also looking, again, helping us plan for the next year. Maybe that means, I believe you mentioned one manufacturer did not have the same type of issues. Maybe that means shifting a little more of this production to them. If we can trust them more, we want to reward them in the sense that we give them more business because we can trust in that relationship a little more while we work on these other relationships. And connected with that, looking at our supplier selection process, seeing if something fell through the cracks, or maybe, I know it took around 6 months, maybe we should do some of that during the Chinese New Year to see what their response rate is like, how they handle that situation, which we already know will be a big issue for any supplier coming from. There will be that time frame. Also looking at our inventory management around this holiday. I'm not sure when the 90-day inventory, when that was established, but now that we've moved some of these core products to China, we know, especially now, that there's going to be a little bit more disruption. Maybe in order to guarantee our relationship with our customers, we might need to now adjust the inventory management strategy, look at the cost of those holding costs, because obviously they'll go up, but seeing if that balances out. Now that we've made this shift, there's a little bit more disruption. How are we going to handle it on the inventory side so it doesn't affect our other stakeholders on the other side, trying to look at the whole market. And then also potentially, and again, long-term, looking at alternate suppliers, or an extent, we know if Mexico, if we move these products away from Mexico, they probably still have some of the capabilities to ramp up if there was a dire need to do it, even though that would impact cost in a negative way. Looking at that, but again, making no really cutthroat decisions now, obviously focused on that, but really trying to find out what happened, and then how we need to adjust, as well as how they need to adjust to handle this newer relationship with these core products.
Hi, everyone. I'm from China, so I'm very familiar with this problem with Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is really a nightmare to manufacturing related companies. So I really understand. Our team came up with 5 solutions. The first solution is to strengthen the relationship with the current vendors. In China, relationship is king, especially if you are a small customer, and the suppliers, usually their priority is to big customers. And during Chinese New Year, there are so many small customers' orders are delayed. I had past experience before, and not only delay and quality issues like this. So I think as long as you have a good relationship with the owner of the factories, you have a very good chance to solve this problem. That being said, we can also consider adding more qualified suppliers as backup, just in case something happens. Our second solution is to have some safety stock for best-selling items. We didn't catch whether the shipment from China is drop shipped to customers or to keep inventory. But this is one of our suggestions. And our third suggestion is to communicate with the customers about this Chinese New Year issue. Because I think all the customers understand this situation as well, and if possible, have them place the order 3 or 4 months in advance. And our fourth suggestion is to have QC in all major processes during manufacturing, because in the apparel industry in China, it's still labor intensive industry, and all QCs are done by human beings, and they make mistakes. And if we can catch the mistakes or quality issues earlier, and at least we have time to make up. And our last solution is consider hiring internal QC in China. One of the main issues of outsourcing to trading company is they also outsource their QC. Each order, there are different QC employees, and each time maybe you have to communicate the QC standards with them, and maybe different employees, QC employees get different standards, and they do it differently, especially during Chinese New Year. They're short-handed, and so these outsourcing labor are very are hard to control. And so if we have our internal QC and train them with our internal standards, and they will be always consistent. And if we provide them with good benefits and everything, and they would still like to work before the Chinese New Year, and maybe even during the Chinese New Year and after, and they would like to keep the same schedule as our US office. And so that will be easier to control. That was all our solution. Thank you.
So thank you all for sharing your solutions. And now it's time for the big reveal. So Matt, please come up and tell us, what the hell have you guys done?
Well, you guys did a really, really, really good job. Couple of things. No one said to fire them, so that was interesting. Can you hear me? Everyone can hear me? No one said to fire them, and then also nobody said economically what should be done as well. So, real quick, I do want to say, so when we noticed the problem here, we still had more goods that were supposed to ship from the factory. So they actually had a third party inspect goods before it shipped, and they found the same discrepancies, the same problems before it shipped as what we found here. So it was extremely alarming also to the factory owner. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention that part. All right, so what did we do? First thing, we received a 30% discount on all the goods that were shipped. And so I think a gentleman brought it up, there's a lot of lost opportunity that we saw when we couldn't ship, product for this time. And, we had confidence issues, and we still do with some of the clients because of this issue. Yeah. So we have an agreement with them around chargebacks, and usually those chargebacks are around shipping issues, packing issues, quantities shipped out of tolerance, and defective. This was off scale. right? This was really off scale in terms of normal, day-to-day business. Okay, so the second thing, I think the more important thing around this was, I forget the team that said this, really kind of like being methodical and addressing it. And so we did a deep SWOT analysis with all the stakeholders involved in this supply chain. So everyone, I'm sure, knows. Does everyone know what a SWOT analysis? Okay, so we did that, and so we had owners. So myself, the owner of the factory, involved, all the key people at Sportiqe, the trading company, and we met to address this. So it wasn't just, hey, top approach from the owners. It was really everyone. So it was it provided inclusivity for everyone, and it allowed, I think, more transparency and trust to be gained between all the parties involved, that that I could step away and know that the team on all sides is what could execute on what any decisions that we were gonna make. So what came out of that meeting was to really reaffirm our values, ensure all parties are aligned, not only short term but also long term. As stated earlier, Sportique's been growing, and actually this supply chain partner's been key to that growth. They've seen the growth, they've seen the projections that we have, and they want to continue moving forward with us. New goals were established coming out of this. One being restoring confidence and building trust, and that takes time, but it also just takes, in the things that I'm going to share here and what we do, that the confidence is just really restored by executing, properly, delivering product on time and not defective. And so you guys all, I think, touched upon this in some shape or other. Evolve and improve QC standards. Increase inline inspection of goods. That was a big one that was talked about. And a lot of this came down to manpower, and labor. As we were growing, I don't think Sportiqe did a good job of working with the trading company, which is really a key partner with us. As I said, there's a gentleman that works with us locally, and he used to live in China, and he's established a lot of these relationships. And so really, as the company and how the business was growing, it was the right QC teams were not there to support the growth. So, but increasing inline inspection is a big one. We added new team members to be specialized in specific areas of the business. So again, we built up staff, and our two core items, our comfy fabric and our comfy fleece, putting a QC team that's completely responsible for all goods around that product or around that styles with that fabric, and same with the comfy fleece. And one of the things that we noticed that was causing the problem is the fabric. Again, so we're now looking at Chinese New Year, there's rush. One of the key things with fabric is it needs to relax after it's been made. And so didn't have enough time to relax. So what happened, what we were seeing in all the measurement problems was short. Everything was so it shrinks. So that was a big thing that we found. Sportiqe and trading company having staff daily in the factory to review QC. So we have an office in Ningbo, but now we have an office now set up in the factory. And that was a big thing to work on from a relationship standpoint with the factory owner to allow this to take place. And again, this all goes to looking at long-term partnership, things of that nature. Establish better communication and meeting cadence, daily, weekly, monthly meetings. So these things were happening, but they were happening fragmented, so to speak. So now having all stakeholders involved in this communication chain, so things aren't missed. And then obviously we did a performance rating on each of the factories, and we dropped one of them. Thus consolidated work between two factories where we saw the best results from QC, capacity, lead time, and overall service. We added 2 new staff members in country to support the management of the business. So that's in addition to QC. So at the trading company office, they are adding now two new staff members, or they did. And so until systems and confidence are restored, all orders post CNY will go through third-party inspection at the factory's expense. So, I mean, that's for them. Then that's for them really kind of saying, look, they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're going to support, and they know, like, if they're going to have to spend that expense to go to a third party, they're going to make sure it's done right. So there we go. Any follow-up questions, or shall we wrap it up?
We'll wrap it up. If anyone does have any questions,
Yeah.
I think so. Matt's going to stick around for a little bit. We can kind of do some one-on-ones, but to respect everyone's time, I understand 2.5 hours is a lot to ask for people, so we'll just wrap up now. But hey, thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And then also another round of applause for Professor Castillo. So real quickly, all the content, at least in the first part of the presentation, if you guys want more information, more details on it, it comes from these 2 sources. So you have the original yellow book, or Conscious Capitalism, co-written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia. And then also you have the Conscious Capitalism Field Guide, which is what a lot of the exercises and more of the details. So it takes the concepts of the higher tenets, but then actually kind of gives you the questions and the frameworks to start exploring on how you could actually implement these in the workspace. So please go out, purchase them. They're relatively cheap. We do have a few floating copies of the field guide. If you guys ever want reference, just come see myself, come see Nick, Ryan, or Mayan, and we'll lend you a copy for you to review. So next, I just want to quickly talk about so becoming a member. So we are on OrgSync, and we're open to any graduate student in ASU. So that is whether you're at the School of Thunderbird, whether you're at the School of Sustainability, whether you're at Fulton School of Engineering, doesn't matter. You could be a member, and there's no cost associated with it. There's only benefit, and the benefit are twofold. So one is a chance to win a ticket to the upcoming Conscious Capitalism Conference. So the annual conference they do is it's happening here in Chandler from the 23rd to the 25th of April. Tickets right now, if you go look, it's $1,200, right? It's expensive, but do you know what? We have 5 tickets. One is going to be maintained for a leader representative. The other 4, completely up to, it's going to be a random raffle to any of our members. So please just go on OrgSync, just sign up as a member, and you have a chance. Do it before noon today. You will be receiving, those who are members will be receiving a survey just saying if you can commit to at least 2 of the 3 days of the conference, and if you're willing to just write a very brief kind of write-up of your experiences. I mean, just looking at like a paragraph or 2. The second offering we have is a resume/yearbook, right? So what we're doing is producing a document that kind of captures all the events that we have done for the semester, and then all our members of that year. And we will be including their resumes, and then also the pretty portraits that everyone got to take at the beginning of their first year, and then an optional write-up on your kind of like goals, aspirations, or like what drives you to get kind of a personal experience. This will be housed and published on our webpage, as well as distributed within the CCI, or the Conscious Capitalism Inc. Community. So great opportunity to get your foot in the door, another differentiator from your peers to show that you are kind of socially conscious, and just sign up, and you guys have access to these 2 things. Also, I just want to note, Conscious Capitalism Arizona is having a free and open event for everyone. So it doesn't matter even if you are part of our chapter, but they're doing I think, what did they call it? It's a stakeholder celebration, and it's at Max 6, which is kind of this open workspace program that Scott McIntosh has run. It's just literally down on University Road. Sign up is on Eventbrite. It's from 6 to 8 on the 17th of April. and it's an opportunity to network with all the conscious capitalism members and key stakeholders within the Phoenix area community. So go on Eventbrite, just search conscious capitalism. You'll find the Arizona listing. Just sign up for it. I will be there, and I hope to see you guys all there. Other than that, one last thing. All right. So Conscious Capitalism chapter is representing, we need a champion. We need someone to represent us in the upcoming Toast Devils competition. So we are not going to be bounding you to a specific topic, but if you have something that you feel is meaningful to say that is relating to one of the four, if not the full four, or just the concept of conscious capitalism in general, come reach out to myself or Ryan Gunderson, and then based on interest, we'll figure out if we need to do some sort of like internal screening process, or hey, you guys are going to be speaking for us. But it's a great event that Dustin is putting on, and we really want to contribute and participate. So other than that, thank you so much for attending, and yeah, I hope you guys all have a great day.